What's up, everybody? Welcome back for the second time this week for the Weekly Pulls. My name's Derek. Follow me on Twitter at the Weekly Pulls. Like, subscribe, share, comment. Let's get started. So since I've started this channel, I've had a lot of people follow me on Twitter, follow them back on Twitter, and vice versa. And a lot of them are indie comic book creators. And I have been fortunate enough to have several reach out to me saying, "Hey, buddy, will you review my book?" And I'm like, yes, I will. And here I am. I'm here to review a couple indie comics that people have inboxed me on Twitter. I'm calling this video the Indie Spotlight. Indie Spotlight! So first up on my Indie Spotlight, we're going to go with the first one that reached out to me. My friend Dan DeMille reached out to me here on Twitter. He's based out of Utah. Dan is a U.S. Army veteran and he's a 15-year law enforcement officer. Dan's a really cool guy. Dan actually has his own printing company, Valor Printing. If you are an indie comic writer and you want someone to print physicals, hit up Dan. He has his own print shop. Pretty cool. Dan and his friends of 30 years, they have been making comics together for 30 years. It's a really, really cool publishing company. Dan and all of his friends, they're super cool guys. If you're out there and you want to support some veteran-owned stuff, here we go. The first comic Dan has sent me was called COGS, short for Keepers of the Gates. COGS is the story of a military company that are in charge of fighting and protecting us from supernatural and extraterrestrial threats. It's a really fun series. I would have known Dan was ex-military before he told me, because you can tell by the way he writes, this guy served his time. That's very cool to me. I love when I can read something and whoever's writing it, their voice really shines through, and Dan's voice shines through in this book. It's a super fun series, plenty of action, good story, good dialogue. COGS is a lot of fun. Next up, he sent me another one called Sentries. Sentries is written by Dan and created by his friends, the Jacobsons. Sentries is a superhero team story. The Sentries are these super powerful beings. They call them Alpha Omegas, and they're here to protect the world. Of course, they have their own little team up in a spaceship. Super cool. I love the art in this book. Dan has actually told me that Sentries has a pretty wide fan base, and he says they get phone calls at the print shop all the time asking him when the next issue's coming out. Sentries is really good, guys. I love the character designs of Sentries. The first issue follows the superhero team, and there's this girl who recently finds out she has super strength, and it's up to the Sentries to find her before this evil Irish dude does, and get her to join their team to protect the world. It's a really fun story. I really love the character designs. This is the definition of indie comics, dude. Like, Dan's drawing it, him and everybody, they're writing it, and they're printing it. So it's super cool for me. Definitely check out Valor Printing. Check them out on Twitter at Art of Dan DeMille. Dan's super cool. Direct message him. He'll answer any and all of your questions. Definitely worth checking out. Dan, thank you so much for sending me your books, dude. Next up, we have Steve Urena. I hope I'm saying that right. It's either Urena or Urena. I'm going to go with Urena. At the Steve Urena on Twitter. Steve is a super cool guy as well. Steve reached out to me. He actually just recently ran a Kickstarter for his next comic, Zombie Date Night. And they did it. They got their backers, and Zombie Date Night is happening. It looks like a lot of fun. Definitely check him out on Twitter. He'll answer any and all questions you have about all of his books. Steve is from Connecticut. He went to the school called Comics Experience. They teamed him up with some artists, and here we are. He writes really good stuff, you guys. Steve's comics are available digitally, and you can reach out to him on Twitter at the Steve Urena for physicals. I'm going to review the comic that he sent me, Slowpokes #1. Look at this cover, dude. When I looked at this cover, I was like, what? This is weird. I love weird stuff. This comic, the cover speaks for itself. It's about killer sloths. Sounds silly? A little bit, but that's the point. It's a good, corny horror comic, and it's awesome. Not only are the sloths killing machines, they're also fast. Long story short, scientist, experiment goes bad, teenagers in the wrong place at the wrong time. These teenagers, it's their senior trip. They're going to this amusement park. This scientist is doing these experiments at this amusement park. The sloths get out, wreak havoc. It's hilarious. It's so well written. Steve is a really good writer, you guys. Definitely hit up Steve on Twitter. Figure out where you can find Slowpokes. It's a hilarious, fun book. I'm really looking forward to Zombie Date Night. Steve, thank you so much for sending me your stuff and letting me review it, dude. Next up, we have a sci-fi comic called Sentinel. at UK_comics on Twitter. This was a really fun book for me. They sent me all of their books, which thank you guys. That was awesome. I haven't read them all yet. I'm going to get around to it. The series was voted the #1 indie series in a certain poll. I'm not exactly sure which one, but there was a poll and they were the #1 series in 2020, you guys. So that's really cool. Every issue is its own independent story. I'm going to review issue 1 here. First of all, these books are huge, 64-page, massive books, kind of like Spawn's Universe I talked about yesterday. Great big stories, wonderful pages. I love the art. Issue 1 follows this main character named Doyle. Doyle is kind of like Han Solo, except he drinks a lot more and gets into a lot of fights. Gets paid to deliver expensive things to people, right? I don't really know the word for that. Not really a smuggler, but he's like a space UPS guy. Doyle has this really expensive package has to deliver to this very prominent figure. This small, looks like a meatball alien that he calls Shorty. Shorty tries to hijack him. They end up crashing. Shorty and Doyle end up having to work together. It's a lot of fun. It's hilarious. One of my favorite pieces was when Doyle and Shorty, they end up trapped in this space jail. Shorty starts talking to Doyle about how he can remove his testicles, and Doyle is, of course, like, what? And for whatever reason, Doyle has a slingshot on him, and Shorty removes one of his testicles, and Doyle uses his testicle as slingshot ammunition. So that was pretty funny. That was probably one of my favorite bits in the whole comic. Sentinel is a lot of fun. Like I said, I'm definitely going to check out the rest of the issues that they sent me. If you love sci-fi, this is it, you guys. Best Indie Comic 2020. You guys over at UK Comics, thank you so much. Next up, we have a comic called Enid, at Enid Comic on Twitter. Enid is this giant fantasy adventure. This gave me Tolkien vibes. When I got to the end of the book, they had a great big map like at the Lord of the Rings books where it shows Edney and everything. I was blown away. The amount of work and love that went into this series, amazing. You guys rock. This series follows a soldier, a queen, and a king. We get perspective from all 3 of them. I love the art in this book. Crisp line work, crisp inking. It's fantastic. Like I said, if you're a big fan of fantasy, Tolkien especially, follow them on Twitter, hit them up, get your hands on these books. They're available digitally and physically as well. If you love a nice, great big fantasy epic, you need this. Enid, thank you guys so much for sharing your book with me. Alright, last but not least, we have Otis Stein by Matthew Valley. It's available on Amazon. This story is weird in the best way possible. It's a nice mix of classic monster horror with evil magic, moonshine accidents. This was a really fun comic. I enjoyed it. Otis and his wife, their daughter is dead. At one point in the story, Otis digs out his old moonshine still. He's trying to make some moonshine. It explodes. He gets obliterated. Unbeknownst to him, his wife has some history with black magic and the dark arts, and she manages to revive him, and it goes crazy. Tons of twists, tons of turns. If you're into old school monsters, if you like magic, like, this is a really good story, you guys. Matthew Valley, thank you so much for sharing your book with me. That wraps it up for my first indie spotlight. As I said, all of you that sent me comics, thank you so much. When I started this YouTube channel, when I started this Twitter, I never expected it to get like this. I never expected people to actually send me their books. Super cool. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. This is what it's all about. Comics never got anywhere without all of us. You need the writers, you need the artists, and you need people like me and everybody else out there that's fans, spreading love, getting the word out. All of you, feel free to share this video. Please share it as much as you want. Show it to everybody. I hope making this video for all of you is able to get the word out, increase traffic to your Twitters and in your comic sales. Thank you so much for trusting me with your work. Tune in next week for next week's pulls, you guys. We'll see you next week.